Welcome, everyone. I have my good friend and Smite World Champion, Neilmah, with me here. Hoping to ask him a couple questions about Phase 1, the playoffs, mid-season patch, and then looking ahead to Phase 2. But first, I think should start about Worlds. How was it winning Worlds? You know, it's a pretty big accomplishment in this scene to become a World Championship. How's that feel now that we're 6 months into the next year?
Yeah, at the time, obviously, it's like indescribable almost. It's just all this effort and just so many feelings, right? Of just like up and down, just turmoil. Like maybe one phase you do really well and you're like, yes, we can win. The next phase you do poorly and you're like, man, am I ever going to win? And then you watch all these other teams win. And at the end of it, it's just all washes out all the doubt. And you're like, it's the validation that, yeah, you're good enough. You and your teammates did it.
Sure.
You all played for all when you're the guys. But 6 months later, you know, that's kind of all behind me at this point.
Yeah.
It's about looking forward. Like, it was great to win at the time.
Sure.
And it still feels great. But at the same time, you can't live in the past, right? It's about moving forward and focusing on this year and trying to do something special and win again.
Yeah. Speaking about this year then, I guess, you know, Phase 1 was pretty good, I want to say. 4th place finish, not too bad. 8-6. There are a lot of good wins. I think you guys beat Ghost at least once during Phase 1, beat Radiance. So guys had a lot of good wins. How do you think Phase 1 went for you guys? Were you happy with you know, how you played and things like that? I mean, obviously you guys want to win every game, but overall, how do you think you guys did in Phase 1?
I think it would have been like, it kind of just, our phase kind of gets defined, I guess, by the result at the end. We ended up finishing, I think we tied for 5th to 6th, actually, got first rounded. But
are you sure? Because the standings page says 4th place. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, 4th place, we never made it to the semis. We made it to the semis, would have been 3rd, 4th, right?
Okay.
But either way, 6th place. We ended up losing to Radiance. We went 1-3 against them. So
yeah,
obviously a bad taste in our mouth. I think that we kind of didn't show up as well as we should have on that day, and I think our drafts weren't that good.
Sure.
They played really well as well, but I think that we would have had a really good shot in that set if we had just been a little bit more prepared and played a little bit sharper. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, it wasn't a great result for us. But at the same time, like, if we had just played a little bit better and we had made it to the semis to the finals, we'd be having a different discussion. I think that's something that we were really capable of.
Yeah.
So I think that we were competitive in the first phase, which was important. And not only competitive, we were improving and we were growing and we were kind of meshing as a team. Because even though most of our team is the same, we still had Fred come in. And then on top of that, too, the season's way different. The meta was a lot different than it was at Worlds. So there's a lot of new things to kind of pick up. And every single time there's a new meta or a new patch, it's not the same. Even though we were amazing last Worlds, like, it's a new game, right? You have to rediscover what's your identity going to be. How do you guys want to play? What gods are good? Does the god pool suit you? So there's a lot of rediscovering happening. And I think that overall we weren't happy with how it went, just based on how we finished, but there were a lot of good things to take away from the first phase that we know wasn't really like a waste of time or like the worst thing in the world that we didn't do as well as we thought we should.
I'm going to ask about Fred in a second, but I got to ask about all the newcomers and a bit of the contraction that happened in the SPL before Phase 1 here. What are your honest thoughts on Sanguine, especially them finishing first place at the end of Phase 1, and things like that, being rookies in the league this year? And also, like, some of the other newcomers, I'm thinking maybe like Bobby on Obey and people like that. How do you feel like those guys have performed in their first phase in the SPL?
I think that starting off with the Sanguine, they've obviously impressed everybody. Like last year, I think they were obviously a good team. They made Worlds, and obviously they deserved to be there, but they were definitely a step below every other team that at Worlds. It kind of felt like to me. Like Like, even in the placements, we kind of washed them around. I think that they probably felt like they could have played a bit better, but we handled them pretty easily. And now, fast forward to now, it's just leaps and bounds different, obviously. Like, coming in for your first split as like a totally amateur team in the SPL and taking first, like, you can't call that luck by any means. It was definitely just like a huge effort by them, and they definitely earned their place in the SPL. And it's just really, really awesome to see how much they've improved. They're a good group of guys, and they're motivated, and it's good to see a group of guys like that come to the SPL who deserve it, not only because of their play, but also just, like I said, like a good group of guys who are like who are pretty humble too. Like Netrioni came in, they had taken a few good games off teams. They're like, look, we're still going to be losing. Like, we're a new team, we have a lot to learn. Sure. Yeah, we're doing well, but like let's keep it realistic. So I think that yeah, I'm really happy to see those guys doing so well, and I'm excited to see what they bring for phase 2. And then in terms of newer players like Bobby's been back and forth a bit, and I think that support's a weird role to kind of step into a team that's not doing so well.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're stepping into a team that's not doing so well in your support, it's hard to set up for a team that might not know what they're doing to begin with, right? Like, how are you supposed to engage fights if you don't know, if your team doesn't know if the fight's going to be good or not, or how to team fight, right? But now they have a bit more stability.
Sino coming in the middle probably
for sure
jumbled that up a little bit too for him as well.
Yeah, but I think it was good. Like, I don't think Weekend's a bad player, but I think Sino gave them a bit more direction and confidence, and sometimes the team just needs a shake-up.
Sure.
I think that with that, Bobby and like the team kind of found their own way, and now having practiced against him a few times, he's actually been playing pretty well in scrims. So I've been really happy to see him kind of play like how everyone knows he can play, because obviously he's a bit up and down, and sometimes he does not look good at all. But when I was practicing against him, I was like, if he can bring this to the SPL, like, he'll have some really good performances. So it's been good to see new players come as well, and returning players like Sino and Bobby. And I think the league's going to be really competitive the second phase. I think that Obey and Wolfie and all those boys are going to be pretty strong, actually. So I'm excited to see what they can bring.
A lot of people are thinking that even Renegades and Obey and some of these teams that, it's even hard to call them like bottom tier teams, because it just feels like anyone can at least take a game off of any other team in this league. So I will ask about Fred. How's Fred been? I'm sure you guys are now all sort of meshing. I see all the PK videos. You guys look like you're having a grand old time in the house. So I imagine the camaraderie is kind of there and things like that. But how's that been? Specifically just changing out one player, because the rest of the team dynamic, I'm sure, has pretty much stayed the same.
Yeah, it's been nice having Fred around. Him and Sam are both really good guys in their own way, but they're quite different as people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I wouldn't say one's better than the other, either in terms of player hanging out with. They're just different, right? Like, Sam's a bit more of a reserved guy.
Mm-hmm.
They're both really funny guys. Fred's a bit more outgoing than Sam. Sam's a bit more stay at home. But like, I really like hanging out with both of them. They're both just a lot of fun to be around. So that hasn't changed a whole lot for us. And in terms of play, they definitely have different play styles, and they see different things in the game.
Yeah.
And it's just different, right? But it's been great having Fred around. Like, we've learned a lot from him, and he's learned a lot from us. Yeah, and it's been going really well. Yeah.
Did you guys pick up any Danish? Right? He's from Denmark, right?
Dude, I was using Duolingo for a bit, learning a tiny bit of Danish. And I think after like a few days, he was like, "Dude, what are you doing? Like, Danish is such a trash language." He's like, "Dude, this language is so shit. No one uses it. Like, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, it came from the horse's mouth. I guess I'm just done with Danish. Like fuck this shit. I just gave it up. Like, I don't know." So not really, to be honest. Like, he hasn't really been using any Danish at all. He basically told me to ditch the language.
Is he an honorary NA now?
Essentially, yeah. And then his go-to, he's always like, "Man, my English is so bad." We're like, "What are you talking about, man? Like, you speak perfect English."
I think his English is very good.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. All right. Focusing in a little bit more on the playoffs. Did you guys think Dodgy was coming at you? I mean, Dodgy basically ran a lot of the tournament for Radiance, as far as I could tell. What are your thoughts on Dodgy? That was like the big story.
Yeah, we had not seen anybody player. Like, we've been practicing for weeks, hadn't seen anyone player. In practice throughout all the phase, like, no one really played her at all. There was like maybe at the very beginning people played her a little bit, but it's God that no one, at least we hadn't seen for months. And they picked it, and it's like, what the, like, Dodgy, like, what, like, why are they picking Dodgy? And like, it's a god we kind of forget a lot of what she does and how to play against her. And so it definitely caught us off guard, especially the Dodgy and the Kepri. It's like, when they fight together, who do you kill? Like, the Dodgy hits you, she ults, she's invincible, and by the time she lands, she's a Kepri. It's like, oh shit. And all of our picks too, like weren't that great into it. So I think their drafts were definitely really, really strong, and I think it made those games just really hard to win after game one. They just had in my opinion, like, quite a big advantage in the mid game, and we kind of played into that a little bit. But their drafts were just phenomenal.
Yeah, Dodgy also just doesn't feel like an adapting god. You know? Like,
yeah, not particularly, no.
It doesn't really have like the hard CC, that you want to engage and like be a hard carry sort of. It's a little more setup-y and things like that. But I know I have been learning recently that Dodgy puts out a lot of damage. Apparently, her chains do a lot of damage. She was just like going up and sniping people, like almost with like ROM snipes. It felt like so. Damn. I don't know.
Yeah, he played it to a T as well. Like, he played super well. I think he had a bit of a shaky phase one, in my opinion, but when playoffs rolled around, like, he was playing so sick. Like
Yeah.
that whole team was just firing on all cylinders, and especially adapting in my mind was just playing nuts.
Yeah, it was really really crazy to see, especially because to the back end of phase one, they had sort of not been winning as much, been losing some games. It felt like the duo lane was kind of not able to keep pressure a lot of times, and I don't know, it looked kind of shaky, especially considering that this is when we start to see the quote unquote super teams in our league
Yeah,
start to falter a little bit, is around the mid-season time or just a little bit after that, like the early start of phase two, is sort of where the cracks start to appear a
for
little
sure.
bit. And it was I guess refreshing to see that this team is not succumbing to that sort of pattern that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of teams, and even myself included, to a little bit, were like, this team's just gonna blow up. Like, you got a bunch of like
Mm-hmm.
some hot personalities on a team. Like, the team's kind of emotional at times, and like everyone's like, this team.
Not
There's
just
like a
hot
50-50 shot. Like,
personalities.
they could be sick, or they could just implode,
I
right?
think there's some stubborn personalities too.
For
Like,
sure,
I
yeah.
mean, Aurora's not really necessarily a hot personality, but when he, I think, has his mind set on something, it's pretty set on something.
Yeah.
And if and I kind of feel the same way about Adapting, who is a bit hotter of a personality, I would say. But it's totally true. Like, was definitely the chance there could have been a lot of clashes here, but it seems like they're sorting things out pretty well.
Yeah, and that was just kind of my impression, just seeing the team on paper. Like, after talking to some players they'd played with, a lot of people were like, yeah, and talking to the players themselves, they're like, yeah, like everything's pretty easy to work with. So I think it was a bit of a misconception in the year, but it's good to see players of that caliber and players who I'm friendly with as well, just doing so well, because they're a really good team, and it's great to see the league be competitive. And it's always good to see teams like they have a bit more of a unique take on the game. I think they play a little bit different picks and stuff than everyone else. They play a little bit differently. So it's cool to see that team do well. And like you said, for once, like a super team actually being a super team.
Mm-hmm. Well, last question about the playoffs, especially now with things sort of drastically changing with the midseason patch. Are there some things that you left in the tank? Maybe some strats like Hachiman support, things like that. Anything that you wanted to show off that you didn't get a chance to that's now kind of dead, or is everything still alive given how fresh everything is now?
Yeah, there were a few things like we didn't try. Nothing that we really were like banking on, but like a few picks that were like, if it looks good, we'll try it. I'm not sure. We haven't really played them a lot recently. I'm not sure if they're dead or not, but a lot of stuff with the midseason patch changed a lot of the meta. So
yeah,
we're like what we're trying to do right now is just kind of reestablish like what we think is good and like our pick priority and just how we want to play the map and kind of go from there. And then once we have a good foundation for like, okay, like we know what to do. This is what's good. Now we can kind of deviate a little bit now that we've done all that. We know, like, say, for example, like Kukulkan or something, as an example.
Yeah.
We know that god's good. We don't have to keep spamming that. We can pick some other stuff. Let's experiment a little. But right now it's kind of back to the drawing board. Find the right build paths, find the right gods, find the right way to play a map, and we'll go from there. So,
okay. Speaking about the midseason patch, do you have any favorite items or gods that have either new items or items that have been changed that are catching your attention right now that are, maybe we're going to see in the Neilmah special sometime soon?
a lot of the items that were picked up and like were introduced weren't really Guardian items, to be honest. So that's kind of lame a little bit because they're still like kind of building the same stuff. But there are a lot of really cool items in the game. Like Serrated Blade's a really interesting item. We saw a few people play Golden Blade. I'm not a huge fan of it, to be honest, but that's new. And then you had Hecate, which has now been nerfed.
Yeah,
which is really weird because it kind of changed the meta for like 1 week, and now it's kind of nerfed, and it's like, is it still going to be played second week kind of thing? Like, who knows? But yeah, I think Serrated Blade's kind of been cool, and I think the Gaia buff was interesting.
Okay.
I kind of thought it was good before, to be honest. Like, I honestly think like it had its place in the game, and you didn't need to buff it. But now they buffed it. It's not broken or anything. Like, I think it's still fine. But now you see people buying it like crazy.
Sure.
And just anti-heal, like, I don't know. I didn't really like the Hecate meta, to be honest, because there's so much healing. Like, you have to anti-heal. So, but I think the new Spear of the Magus is a really cool item now that they've nerfed it a little bit too. They made it a little bit less desirable for mids to build. It's still a really good item in my opinion, but now, like, as a support player, if no one's picked it up on your team, you're a Guardian.
Yeah.
Like, your last item slot, that's incredible, right? Say you're like Fafnir, you hammer somebody, and all of a sudden your whole team does 7.5% more damage. Like, that's like such a cool thing that Yeah, mids can still build it, but it has a lot of utility still in
Yeah,
these
definitely.
cool setup guardians. So I like that item a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I was just about to ask you about Magus because I know Frost early on when the midseason patch came out was kind of hyping up. Maybe this
Hmm.
is the way that support should play, picking up Magus, doing some damage, and being able to sort of like force their own mages into the
Hmm.
backline. So I'm glad that you said that that's possibly something that you're looking into. Are there any gods that you're interested in playing? I know, kind of looks like Cthulhu sucks in support after after week one. But are there any guys that are maybe under the radar that you're looking at? Maybe about pulling out of the time machine. I don't know, Sylvanas. Maybe some.
That god is so bad. I don't even care. Like that god, I will not play that god. He is literally just the worst version of like everybody. His
Yeah.
lane clear, like that used to be his thing, and now it
Yep.
just doesn't even feel like it's like that imposing anymore. To be honest, it's weird. He's a bad god, but
Sure.
there's definitely some stuff I've been like meaning to try, and I really want to play
Yeah.
that I haven't played in a while.
Kuzemba, are we gonna see a Neil Kuzemba soon?
You never know, man. You never know. But I think there's a lot of viable gods right now. Like right
Yeah.
now, like I said, the slate's kind of clean. Everyone's kind of figuring out what's what.
Hmm.
And it kind of feels like you could play a number of different things in support. Like you could play solo laners in support. You could probably get away with playing some assassins, some mages, and like a
Sure.
lot of the guardians right now are really viable. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun going forward because all of a sudden it's not like before I wasn't picking the same stuff all the time, but I think it's just broadened a little bit, especially with like the builds and the other characters that are meta right now. Kind of leaves older guardians or older warriors to kind of open up and be like, oh, like
Hmm.
now that this god's relevant again. I remember like a long time ago, this character was like pretty good into that. Like, why don't we try
Sure.
that?
Sure.
So the way the meta changes is really nice for that because it adds a little bit of variety across the board. So yeah, there's
Okay.
going to be a lot of room for new picks, I think.
That's good. I was gonna ask you about assassin supports, but it already sounds like that's something that you guys are thinking about. You know, with Nejas or Cat, and we already saw Rat pulled out by Raffer
Hmm.
in week one. You think there's a lot of room for aggressive assassin supports in the duo lane? Looking ahead.
I think there's some room. I think that like not a lot of people have fiddled around with it.
Mm-hmm.
Assassins are kind of inherently whenever there's a laning phase, they're a little bit worse
Sure.
because guardians and warriors just have more base stats to them, like more HP.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, assassins do a lot of damage, but you're pretty fragile, right? You can
Yeah.
clear the wave pretty quick, but you can also just get like all in and die pretty easily. So
Yep.
I think there's definitely some room for it, but it is always kind of weird because you're playing an assassin and then in the support role, typically you're behind, right? So
Mm-hmm.
support's kind of a weird role when you're playing these characters that do better from ahead,
Mm-hmm.
like an assassin. But I don't think that means it's not viable. I think it just means that it's a little bit of a deterrent. But I think that depending on how the meta goes and depending how teams play the dual lane and how they play the map, you could definitely see some assassin supports. Yeah.
Sure. Last question about phase two, and then I got some other questions because I asked Aurora about playing you guys when we did our episode about the
Hmm.
phase one playoffs, and so I kind of wanted to hear maybe what you had to say about his thoughts, especially about like picking and banning versus Hal and
Hmm.
playing against Hal. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I first want to get your take on triple round robin in phase two. Whose idea was this?
I don't know. I don't know. It's gonna be like I don't know. More games isn't a bad thing, but it's
It's not,
also
but it's
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 a
a
long season. Yeah.
long season.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because it almost feels like not like phase one in the sense that these games at the beginning don't matter because obviously they all matter, but
Yep.
you could just be trash these first like 5 weeks and then just show up for like the last month or two and you like as long as you qualify, like what does it matter, you know, right? It's good to start building on your fundamentals and building
Hmm.
as a team and working towards worlds, but like the results like don't matter a ton. Like if you're a good team and you have to go through a qualifier
Hmm.
like and you go through a qualifier, as long as you end up at worlds, like who cares if you lose in an like in the qualifier before to get to worlds, like then you probably weren't going to win anyways. So
Right.
it just
Right.
kind of depends on how you grow throughout the phase, and you don't really want to burn out too fast,
Yeah.
and you just kind of want to make sure that you're kind of staying the course and pacing yourself to some extent. Like as long as you're making progress and you're going on an upward trajectory, that's kind of what matters. Not like getting every single match needs to be a blowout 20 minutes. You need
Right.
to play
Right.
absolutely perfect. So it'll
Yeah.
be interesting though.
Speaking about that, the analyst and I had a discussion about Obey, especially with Ducky playing a bunch of these mage solos. Maybe that they were just testing out some things going up against Ghost, especially considering that the phase is so long. You know, you
Hmm.
have a couple of weeks Especially with Obey. Maybe they know they're not favored against a team like Ghost, who is coming off of the playoff win. So they thought, oh, maybe we can take this first week and just try and workshop some things. I'm sure it obviously wasn't that, right? But
Yeah.
maybe there's a little bit of that mentality built into, picking some things that are a bit more out of the box earlier on, just to see what you can do against some of the stronger teams in the league.
My thoughts on that would probably just be they did it in scrims and they found some success with it.
Sure.
Like maybe Ducky showed one day and thought like, oh, this is good for this reason. If we draft it a little bit different, we can make it work.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it just like the result doesn't always mean the pick is bad, right? Just because they lost doesn't mean Knoxville isn't necessarily good. It just depends how you play with it, right? So I think that a lot of these weird picks can work too. And we've seen historically people playing like Afro solos and weird stuff like that, and or Baron solos kind of somewhat similar. Like you try and pick somebody with him.
Yep.
And I don't think it's bad. I just think they probably had some good scrim results where they're playing around with it and they thought maybe it was good to the comp. So, and like you said, like every team comes to try and win. It's not like they were just like, oh, let's just try this against the top team. And so they're trying to get wins, and they obviously think it's good if they'd pick an SPL. So.
Sure. All right. So last week I asked Aurora a lot about how you guys play with Hell, and how opponents, them especially, were picking and banning against Hell and Paul's Hell. And he said something that I thought was really interesting, in that not only is Paul a great mechanical player and a great Hell player on top of that, but he says that you guys work especially well as a team playing with Hell. Is that something that you guys consciously sort of work on in terms of like working around the heals and things like that, and working around Paul and his Hell and like the damage that he can produce? I'm sure like there's a comfortability level that you guys have now, having played almost like 2 years together. But I just wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, I don't think we really change our play too much around certain picks. Like I think obviously if you have a healer on your team, you're going to be looking more to poke and then like back up and heal, things like that. But other than that, we don't really change the way we play around it. Paul just plays the character really well, and we just play the way we want to play, and we try and stay flexible. And every single game we go into, we think, okay, like how do we want to play the map? What are we gonna do to make sure we don't get snowballed on, or so we can snowball on them? And it's not really like we get him on Hell and we're like, oh, okay, we have this strategy pulled up. This is what we're gonna do. It's some wacky thing we have like lined up.
Sure.
But I think it's just a really strong pick for him. He's a really strong player, and I think that's kind of more of the story rather than us having like a set play or anything. I think that it's just a god he's comfortable on, and I think that when we get ahead and we have that character, I think we're just a really hard team to beat.
Yeah, definitely. It's a little surprising though, but I think this past week was the first time you guys ever lost with Paul on Hell.
Yeah, I think it was kind of I think it's just like an unfortunate circumstance. Like obviously it's a cool stat to have, but I think that like it's just the first week and we're testing things out too. We don't know exactly what the implications are going to be of drafting like certain characters, certain places, and all of a sudden we get into a game where like, oh shit, like this does not feel good for X, Y, or Z reason. Like we didn't really see this in scrims because we just like won the game, but when you play an SPL game, it's a little bit different. When you get into scenarios, it's like shit, like there's a big hole like in our draft or like in the way we're playing the map. And I think it was kind of more a victim to that rather than him obviously not like performing or anything like that. Because I think everyone played pretty well on our team to some extent, but I think that we just kind of had other issues that were kind of brought to our attention mid-match, which is unfortunate, but it happens.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you play Hell enough times, you're going to lose on it at least once.
Exactly. Like you just have to. It's just going to happen.
It's just going to happen.
Nothing you can be doing about that.
Yeah. All right. I'm kind of all out of questions. Is there anything you wish to opine about?
Yeah, we can talk about anything, man.
Look at Cubo in the background. Look at Svelte.
Are you looking at me right now?
Yes, sir. You want to come say hi? Dude, don't put your shirt on. Come on. It's what the people want to see, man.
Yeah, come say hi.
Huh?
What kind of interview is it?
Apam's thing. The productions. Come say what's up. You have any questions?
For me?
Questions or thoughts? Eddie, you got any beef to stir?
What do you say, Apam?
Got any beef to stir?
You got any beef?
Yeah.
Beef with who?
As anybody.
Anybody. Call out.
Of course. Call someone out. Call somebody out, bro.
Last bro, see you, buddy. Where you at? Square up, boy.
And yeah, I don't know. We can. Yeah, obviously, big shout out to like PK and everything like that.
Sure.
Like they've been great, and it's been a lot of fun representing them and playing for them.
Yeah.
The first phase, like I said again, like what didn't go exactly how you wanted, but thanks for everyone supporting us, and we've had a really good time. And just really excited about the second phase too. Just getting towards Worlds and working up to Worlds is always going to be really fun.
Yep.
Obviously, we're in a pretty special position. Not many teams really have ever two-peated beside Energy / Pantera, so we're in a really cool spot where we could try and make some history too. So that's obviously what we're aiming to do. But baby steps, man. Just one thing at a time.
Yep.
Like we're a really good team. We play well, but we just gotta we have all the pieces of the puzzle. We just gotta put them all together. And I think this phase will be a bit up and down for us for sure. But I think that as long as we stay the course, like we're gonna be an absolute force to be reckoned with. Because anytime there's a tournament that rolls around and the stakes are high, we're all turning up. So
yeah. Well, I hope the COVID situation works itself out and we can actually
yeah,
get some nice.
That'd be great. Yeah.
At least some LAN games in a studio. That would be. Fingers
That's my
crossed.
freaking dream.
So, thanks a lot for the interview, Neil. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. Always a pleasure talking to you, my friend.